We are the biggest open source company. We started in the 90s really as a way to provide service and commercialization around Linux as an operating system. So we have our own build of Linux, which is called RedHat Enterprise Linux.
And today we have a special guest who's Vincent. Vincent is the CTO of Asia Pacific at Red Hat and also an expert in the open source community.
But for example, in financial industry, because I used this earlier, every single bank in the Fortune 500 actually is a customer. There's no barrier, there's no layers of management.
Yeah.
Everybody is very much working on the same basis, very much valued for their ID and contribution, not for their title. And the expectation as well is we have healthy, transparent discussion about everything.
Yeah.
And the best ID wins. So you need to have the platform, the access. The cloud provider provide an easy access, but most of the cloud providers today, they are American or Chinese.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you are a country that is a user? Maybe like India, you decide to invest heavily into building your own data center and your own like sovereign data center model. You do need at least some access to infrastructure. More concerning is probably the access to engineer.
Yes.
I would say to a lot of these countries, what I'm trying to do when I travel, especially Southeast Asia, right? Like Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam have a lot of engineer, but not yet a lot of open source contribution. And what has happened since last year or so is there was a realization that right now AI is the biggest challenge because it kind of keeps growing our energy usage. And it's a very difficult problem to address because you need to look at the infrastructure layer. How your data center has access to energy makes a big difference.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the CTO Show hosted by Tech Vibe. I'm your host, Philip, and today we have a special guest who's Vincent. Welcome to the show, Vincent.
Thank you.
Vincent is the CTO of Asia Pacific at Red Hat and also an expert in the open source community. So Vincent, I would love to maybe start with your overall career because you're not from Singapore. What brought you to Red Hat and what brought you to this Asia Pacific region specifically?
Well, so I've been about 25 years in Singapore. Most of it has been in banking technology, as a matter of fact. So I spent some time working for banks, but also financial vendors. Really building financial systems. And so I really came into Red Hat and open source technology as a user primarily. I think financial institutions are probably the fastest adopter in terms of open source, especially with regards to operating system like Linux. So I was a customer of Red Hat for years before the evolution to cloud computing. And then the realization that there was a big industry and technology shift to cloud native technologies. And that's what brought me to Red Hat and, as a company and as a technology provider.
Fantastic. I guess for those of the viewers who don't know really what Red Hat does, do you mind describing like what is Red Hat and what
so we are the biggest open source company. We started in the 90s really as a way to provide service and commercialization around Linux as an operating system. So we have our own build of Linux, which is called RedHat Enterprise Linux. And pretty much in the 2000s, we've been focusing on growing the use of Linux in critical industries, banking, public sector, to name a few, growing our middleware footprint as well. And I think the big change was probably around 2013, 15 with the rapid adoption of container and DevOps. Then there was a realization that we need some kind of an orchestration engine, which essentially became very much Kubernetes, was contributed by Google initially. And then Red Hat came together with IBM as some of the early contributors to take Kubernetes open source. And so today, I guess a lot of our focus is pretty much cloud native technologies as a whole.
That's amazing. And to give the viewers a sense of maybe the scale and the impact of what Red Hat does, do you have a sense of maybe who you work with and which customers do you cover? Yeah.
But so it's it's hard to kind of give names.
Yeah.
But for example, in financial industry, because I used this earlier, every single bank in the Fortune 500 actually is a customer.
Wow.
So that kind of gives you a sense. It's very hard in today's world to actually run a business without Linux as an operating system. And then when you need an enterprise version, which means you need access to support,
Yes.
you need access to the security capabilities, then of course, Red Hat has been pretty much occupying this area from kind of a service provider perspective.
Incredible. And I just want to just zoom into the concept of open source, right? Why is open source important? And what's the difference maybe between open source and closed source?
But so, maybe I have a slight twist on this.
Yeah.
Because again, I come from the customer perspective. The way I look at it is very often as computer engineer, we are very keen to reinvent the wheel. So we will talk to a user and we want to build a technology from scratch. 99% of the time it's very inefficient because there's a community out there of people who, as a collective, probably are smarter and have more experience than we do
Yes.
to actually build solution.
Yeah.
So the lower you go in the technology stack, obviously operating system,
Yeah.
but anything around the platform, it kind of makes sense to build software with the power of community and have more hands, more engineer
Yeah.
actually building features, contributing fix, making sure that your code is secure, as opposed to have like a tiny team of smart people
Yeah.
and kind of take the task by yourself. So I always approach open source more from an efficiency perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, I come from bank, and what I used to tell my team all the time is our job is to actually build technology solution for banking customer. So building an operating system is not part of that.
Yeah.
Building an orchestration platform for container is not part of that.
Exactly.
Building a way to leverage a GPU
Yeah.
in order to run machine learning model is not part of that either. So when you start mentally to think, what is the best way for me and my engineers to build solution rapidly,
Yes.
but solutions that are trusted and secure?
Yeah.
And so open source technology to me is the obvious solution.
I think the open source community is very special and very unique in some sense, right? Because not only, do people leverage this efficiency by using the work that other people have done, a lot of people also try to give back. And I think it seems like there's a culture of trust almost, right, that is built among this community.
I mean, definitely, I think, the biggest, I would say, impact, I think, to an individual is actually, I think, the working model.
Yeah.
When you start being a contributor, I mean, the first thing is the way that people collaborate is very different from a traditional enterprise model.
Yeah.
In an enterprise, if I'm a new engineer, I will not talk to the CTO. You will find in open source, projects where I contribute. Me as a CTO can talk to a junior engineer who's been around maybe for a year or so. There's no barrier. There's no, layers of management
Yeah.
actually preventing the collaboration.
Yeah.
Everybody is very much working on the same basis, very much valued for their ID and contribution,
Yeah.
not for their title. And the expectation as well is we have healthy, transparent discussion about everything.
Yeah.
And the best ID wins. So that's really what's extremely important. For me, it was a bit of a revelation, to be honest, because again, I came more as enjoying open source from the benefit side of it,
Yes.
getting the technology for like 20 plus years.
Yes.
And then I moved to Red Hat 5 years ago. And then, one objective I set for myself is, since now you're part of Red Hat, you have to understand better
Yeah.
the open source from the contributor angle. So I forced myself to go contribute, I started with a few projects. Open Source Climate was one of them. Now I contribute to Linux Foundation, AI and Data. I'm a contributor to the CNCF. But essentially, I had this kind of, a growth pathway on open source principle very, very late in my career. And I kind of wished, if there's one thing I would do differently if I start my career again, is I wouldn't wait 20 years to actually be part of open source communities.
Wow. That's very inspiring. Yeah. I think it's almost like this insight or unlock where you realize that Actually, even if you do something like open source, there's still a lot of value that you can derive from it, and you can even build massively successful companies like Red Hat on top of this entire community as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incredible. I'm just curious as well because obviously now in the news we see and hear a lot of talk about tariffs and about data protection, and maybe some ecosystems also wanting to protect their own data and protect their own technology and software. What's kind of your prognosis of maybe open source in this community, in this climate, right? Is it going to be affected by this more, onshoring maybe of different technologies? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's definitely an impact, but I mean, to me, I guess I'm a positive person by nature.
Yeah.
So I want to see open source maybe have the ray of light in the situation that we are currently, because an example is I've been in China already 3 times this year. We have an engineering team
Okay.
in Beijing,
Yeah.
and also we see a huge amount of interest in open source AI in China, in particular in contribution.
Really? Okay.
And so a few weeks ago, I was actually in Beijing. We ran an open source AI meetup.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it was Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
And we had close to 4,500 people dialing in
Wow.
and asking questions. And so that's very interesting because we actually were talking about technologies that are global by nature.
Yeah.
One of them is called VLLM. It's pretty much, I would say, today the standard for serving models, Gen AI models in open source.
Yeah.
And there was a huge amount of interest, not just to use, but to potentially contribute. So because open source contribution itself is not affected by any sort of commercial tariff or
Anyone can contribute.
yeah, anyone, so we can actually work with engineers from Chinese company without actually being, facing any of those sanctions or limitations.
I'm so curious, like, why do you think that is that so many Chinese engineers, which traditionally, from the US side, which is, I'm a US citizen, you think of China as a very closed ecosystem, right? Like, why do you think there's so much interest in doing open source from China?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things. I think first, there is an interest globally
Yes.
in dealing with sovereignty around AI. And the reason is I think every country by now has understood the shift to artificial intelligence is very critical in making business competitive. And so every country out there almost has some strategy to look at how do we manage the dependency to the access of AI. And this dependency are a few levels, right? There's hardware dependency.
Yeah.
So how do I get access to those NVIDIA accelerator?
Yes.
Without which I cannot train a model.
Right.
I cannot serve it, right?
Yeah.
There are dependency around infrastructure management.
Right.
Like, obviously having an accelerator is good,
Yeah.
but it's not easy to access it. So you need to have the platform,
Right.
the access. The cloud provider provide an easy access, but
Yeah.
most of the cloud providers today, they are American or Chinese.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you are a country that is a user? Maybe like India, you decide to invest heavily into building your own data center and your own like sovereign
Yeah.
data center model
Yeah.
to have access to your own acceleration. And if you are China, maybe the biggest difficulty you have is first, you are restricted from having access to the most advanced accelerator model.
Yes.
So you have to find alternative strategy, maybe using simpler model or optimization to actually deal with that restriction. And also there is the fact that a lot of the initial Gen AI, burst is very much based on model train on the internet, which is very much Western data. So
Yes.
the other aspect you have to deal with is what do you do around building models that are close in terms of language, culture,
Yeah.
usage
Yeah.
to what you want as a country. If you are going to build services for your citizens,
Yeah.
you probably don't want to run a Chinese model on Western data because you won't understand, the culture and like the day-to-day usage and like the way people interact with each other, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting topic because I think every country has to kind of build its own path.
Yes.
And it means something different because they have different resource
Yes.
and different perspective and restrictions as well.
Got it.
This episode is brought to you by TechVibe, your one-stop IT recruitment solution provider. We connect global companies with top tech talent across Southeast Asia. Whether you're looking for permanent hires, short-term contractors, or employer of record, EOR services, we've got you covered, especially in the IT and digital sectors. Thanks for tuning in. And now, enjoy the episode.
Okay, so what you said actually has so many different tangents we can go down, but I just want to start with the basic premise and assumption. I thought, OpenAI was actually open. Are you saying it's not actually open source?
Yeah, so I mean, it's I get this like so often.
Yeah.
Because obviously the name OpenAI is fantastic. Now, there is still a lot of debate on what's an open model. In fact, a lot of providers have been using the term open source model.
Yes.
I personally don't think there is such a thing as open source model.
And what's your definition of a true open source model versus?
So,
yeah.
Again, that's pretty much based on some of the work I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
In the Linux Foundation AI and Data Foundation, we actually have a group called GenAI Commons. And this group, in the late 2023 and most of last year, spent a fair bit of time defining what we call the model openness framework. So the idea of the model openness framework was, it doesn't make sense to talk about an open source AI model. The reason is, if you are using an open source license for the model, but you don't give any access to the underlying data that you use to train it, then actually people don't really know what's inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way we looked at it is, we thought that instead of focusing only on the license of the model, it's actually more important to go into the components of the AI model.
Yeah.
So we look at the data sets that were used in the model training. We looked at the data sets that were used in the evaluation as well.
Yeah.
We look at the synthetic data generated if you are using maybe a reinforcement learning process as part of your model training process. And then we look at the code as well, but here I'm talking about the code used for tuning, the code used for model evaluation.
Yeah.
And the idea is, you can't really claim that any model is going to be fully open source, because that would be very difficult. There is going to be some kind of data or artifact that is proprietary most of the time, except maybe some academic,
exactly,
like projects. But if you force people to have a full transparent disclosure on what is open and what is not, and then for what is open, you actually mandate them to use open source license for this, right?
Yeah.
So you can have open source code.
Yeah.
There is also open source license for data as well. Yeah. And then you can make the documentation available as well to your user.
Yeah.
So people can use this framework as a basis, not to say whether the model is open or closed, but rather to say how open the model is, right? So it's kind of not black or white.
It's a spectrum, right?
But on the spectrum,
I see.
Are you more open or more closed? Which doesn't mean that closed models are bad, by the way. The way I look at it is, as a business, you may be okay to use a closed model, depending on the use case and with full awareness of the risk, right?
Got it.
So we want to promote transparency
Yes.
and completeness of disclosure.
Got it.
Yeah, as a basis.
Got it. So on the spectrum, maybe can you give us a sense of maybe where OpenAI is, where, obviously in the media, people are saying DeepSeek is a open source model, right? Or even Llama, right? Where do these fall? And also, to the viewers out there, like, what's the reason why, maybe a provider doesn't want to completely open source their models, and even in terms of data and everything?
Absolutely. So maybe let's take the spectrum, right?
Sure.
OpenAI is on, unfortunately, the lower end of the openness.
Got it.
Especially right now. Obviously, because you can't even take the model and serve it yourself.
Yes.
And actually look at the output. So this is in addition to, you don't have an idea of the data that goes in and the guardrails or anything. I would say most of the industry right now claiming that they have an open source model.
Yeah.
Actually, those are what I call open weight model.
Open weights. Yeah.
So what it means is you can go to maybe Hugging Face, and then you can download a version of the model that you can use for serving.
Yeah.
Yeah, within the open weight model, there's slight differences, obviously. Models like Llama are a little bit more close because they don't use open source license.
Yeah.
They actually use a meta
license. Yeah.
license for
Yeah.
this, whereas a DeepSeek or a QN model from Ali, as an example, will use an Apache 2.0 license.
Yeah.
So they are deemed more open in the sense because they are more permissive in terms of their licensing. And then I would say in the slightly better, good example will be the Granite models from IBM. I work a lot with IBM research.
Yeah.
And so we use Granite a fair bit in our internal use case as well. And so what Granite does is their open weight model,
Yeah.
but the documentation gives you access to the majority of data sets that were actually open sourced
Yeah.
and that were used in the training process.
That's great.
So you can look at the documentation and you'll have the data sets. And then you have a link on a Hugging Face space where essentially you can see the data yourself.
Great.
So, that's kind of very, very close to very open or close to one as a factor of openness in that case.
And do you think the reason why a lot of these companies do not want to disclose the data is because the data comes from various sources that they're not comfortable sharing, or what's the reason why?
I mean, of course, we don't know exactly, but there's a lot of concern around trademark and around data.
Of course.
I mean, I'm not a legal person, so always hard for me to kind of comment on this, right?
Yeah.
But what I know is for sure there's a lot of claim that improper data was used in the training of most of the frontier model, whether they're like OpenAI, Anthropic, and obviously some of the open weight model as well. It's probably the case. It's just very hard looking at how GenAI works to actually prove otherwise,
Of course.
I would say. But it's also creating kind of issues. So right now there's a lot of discussions on limiting the data access, especially from tech companies that are crawling for data or crawling the web.
Yeah.
Which is understandable because there's obviously some data owners who want to protect their IP.
Yeah.
And at the same time, when you think about the public good, it can actually create issues. One interesting project to mention is a Common Crawl.
Yes.
Actually, a foundation that was created to have a single process to crawl the internet for data and make it available for community and academic purpose. This foundation is not for profit.
Yes.
It's not crawling to make any money.
Yeah.
And it's also a very efficient process to actually crawl the data one single time and not have like hundreds of companies doing it with their own processes. So I would argue it's good to have it.
Of course, for the public good. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's almost impossible to restrict, commercial company from crawling, but then let this one guy who has the best intent to actually get access to your data, right? So
I see.
That's, I think, creating a lot of issue in terms of the quality of data that we have access to in the training process. And especially if you are doing community research, like, I'm doing, especially in the AI safety space, is becoming increasingly difficult to get access to good data sets. So there's a big need now for industry to find solutions around, kind of how do we curate data, how do we manage the access to it, and so on.
Yeah, it's such a shame because, this Common Crawl and other technologies are definitely for the public good.
Yeah.
And now it seems that because of maybe some of these models are exploiting the use of this technology and commercializing it, then if I'm a data owner, I also don't want you to, crawl my data regardless of who you are, because I actually don't know the final intent and purpose of where my data will actually go.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. Is there any kind of solution to that, do you think, in the future? I'm just curious. Yeah.
Well, I just think it's going to change the business model totally. So if you think about it, right, just as a mental model, take newspapers.
Yes.
20 years ago, I was still reading the newspaper.
Yeah.
When digital came in, people could search the internet for content. Newspaper that didn't move information digital, then they struggled, right? Now the problem is we have a change in model again to get content access. Because few years ago, I would go on Google search, then I would get a link, then I would access the content through its rightful owner or producer.
Yeah.
But now, actually increasingly, I was reading an article yesterday that said that probably close to 10% of search is already happening through Gen AI.
Wow.
And so that's growing very rapidly.
Yes.
So it means the way that people have access to information is changing. So I think that requires a totally different mind shift from content producer and owner again.
Yeah.
And I don't really quite think we have the solution yet.
Yeah, I know that even last week, I think Google's stock price went down a lot just because they started to see some disruptions of
Yep.
this 10 blue links, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So traditional publishers, maybe they're not getting media revenue attribution as before
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
Wow, super interesting. I want to maybe zoom out a little bit and maybe go back to one of the original points that you were talking about on data sovereignty and maybe on a macro level from a country level, right? So now it seems like this AI race is kind of between two countries, right? US and China. And a lot of these even, non-open source, kind of closed source or open weight models are coming from one or two of these countries. So if I'm in a country like maybe Singapore or Vietnam or Indonesia, or even in India, which is a sizable country, how do you think that I could actually still participate in this AI revolution?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's happening. I'm actually doing a lot of work in India right now. There's an initiative by the government called India AI. And essentially what India AI is doing is first building the infrastructure, the common infrastructure. They are looking at having 10,000 GPU access to public sector organization as a starting point.
Yeah.
Then it's going to pretty much grow over time. We are working with some of the providers that are building sovereign data center specific to GPU access, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we call it GPU as a service type of model. And we already know over time it's going to evolve to what we call a model as a service. So model as a service is now, instead of just providing the access to infrastructure, you basically have Indian language model, you have model trained on business data,
Yeah.
Indian lawyers, Indian accountant. I actually work very closely with one of the provider called NextGen in India. They are one of the provider that was selected as the first bidder
Yeah.
as one of the cheapest provider of GPU for the Indian market.
Yeah.
And we work very closely to make sure they have the software to operate GPU in a very efficient manner. And yeah, I think it's a good example that open source is kind of saving the day here because those providers don't have to build operating system, they don't have to build virtualization technology, they don't have to build orchestration, they don't have to develop access to GPUs. They are just providing the service to Indian startup as well as public sector organization who need access to AI. And then once you have this, you can focus your own resources, which actually India has plenty,
Yes.
especially on the technical side, to build your own model based on your own culture, your own data. And it's not that complex because, again, a lot of the fundamental technology you use to train model
Yeah.
is also open source. I mean, look at PyTorch
Yes.
as a project. I mean,
Yes.
it's extremely successful, probably the most used open source technology for AI out there. So, that's the beauty. For countries like Singapore, though, you don't have the natural, volume of people,
Right.
the land size that
Yeah.
allows you to build data center.
Yeah.
So there's a very interesting policy there, right? Which is really make sure that you use your own capability and data center in Singapore for the very, very high-end use case. So you kind of start to delegate low-level data center usage to the neighbors,
Yeah.
as an example.
Yeah.
And then you promote a lot of high-end capability like research, on AI safety
Yeah.
in particular. I actually sit on the AI Verify Foundation that was created by MDA in Singapore.
Nice.
And right now, AI Verify Foundation is running a big global POC around AI safety with a number of tech companies, right? So Singapore is trying to take a lead in, how do we use AI for government use case, to build citizen services? How do we build thought leadership into fields like AI safety, AI sustainability? Yeah, which is a different way to have like a skin in the game.
I see.
And the last interesting use case I would signal is there's actually an initiative called Sea Lion that started about like a year plus ago
Yeah.
to build Southeast Asian language model. So that also shows that, as a country, you can partner with other countries
or
around
regional,
you,
yeah.
and then use again open source as a process, because Sea Lion is open source. So the whole participation to build the model is again built on a community process, right?
That's great. And how do you think about maybe countries who are more emerging, right? Where maybe they don't have, let's say, $100 million or several billion dollars for NVIDIA GPUs, or maybe that even if they do have a lot of data for their native country, it's maybe a small amount of the global population. So on the commercializing aspect, maybe it's not so efficient to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
How do they, how do they actually still participate in this?
Well, so, there's one good news. I don't know yet if it's going to be sufficient.
Yeah.
But I think there's already a convergence towards the use of small Gen AI model, and really have the community do a lot of work around bringing down the size but improving the capability. We at RedHat, we actually made an acquisition this year of a company called Neural Magic.
Okay.
Neural Magic was known to be the biggest contributor to VLLM, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But also has been a big contributor of techniques around optimization of model. Techniques such as model quantization would be an example. How you basically bring down the size of model while keeping the response and the quality very high.
Yes.
So they have a lot of expertise in this kind of technique. And then similarly, we've seen other contribution, like DeepSeek, more from an engineering point of view, really brought back reinforcement learning as a really, really powerful way to tune the model very, very quickly at a low cost, based on a pool of synthetic, high quality synthetic data. Really using a reward function and kind of pipeline to do this. So the good news is the cost of the table stake, I would say, is kind of lowered like quite a lot.
Yes.
But it's also not zero, right?
Yeah.
You do need at least some access to infrastructure.
Yes.
More concerning is probably the access to engineer.
Yes.
I would say to a lot of these countries, what I'm trying to do when I travel, especially Southeast Asia, right? Like Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam have a lot of engineer, but not yet a lot of open source contribution. And I'm really trying to make people more aware of how they can actually go contribute to this project and learn the tech. Because if you have the GPU, but you don't really know how to access and use the technology, then it's a bit of a moot, strategy, right? You can't really do much.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah.
I think overall, I hope that, this technology does become more and more open source, because I do think that the public good and the delta in regards to what AI can do for even your local citizens, giving them more opportunities, enriching them, is still going to be way, way better as an investment, I think, overall. I just want to briefly talk about the last subject, which is more around AI and sustainability, because I think, when a lot of companies or even countries talk about AI, they think about how AI is actually, asking someone to, give them a lot of compute, right? But the other one is actually energy, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this goes back to the conversation about sustainability. So I know your work, you're involved in this kind of subject as well. So maybe,
I started my sustainability journey a few years back through a very, interesting angle. One of my first open source project contribution was to a project called Open Source Climate. And so essentially what the project was trying to do is provide access to climate data, in particular to industry and academia that is building climate risk modeling. So the idea was, can we provide access to the data and the code of climate risk model to most institutions out there, so we can first have a common referential, and also obviously kind of fastening the process and the research itself, right? But then in the process, something that really started to draw my attention is actually, as an industry, so RedHat and technology in general, are we actually a good citizen in the whole kind of climate like journey.
Yeah.
And I realized, even industry that are pretty poor, like airlines, the cement industry, they're kind of terrible, but they're trying to get better.
Yeah.
Right? So they're kind of slowly doing better.
Slowly improving. Yeah.
But technology, we kind of the opposite. We are not so big yet,
Yeah.
but we kind of doing
Exponential.
worse
Yeah.
and worse, because of blockchain, AI.
Yeah.
We keep building technology that use more energy.
Yeah.
So I really thought that there is a need for advocacy around how do we get people to think about efficiency when we write code, when we use infrastructure. And so initially it was a very, very broad topic for me. And what has happened since last year or so is there was a realization that right now AI is the biggest challenge
Yeah.
because it kind of keeps growing our energy usage.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult problem to address
Yeah.
because you need to look at the infrastructure layer. How your data center has access to energy makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
Agree.
Does it have access to clean source of energy or not? Does your data center have a good PUE?
Yeah.
To start with, is it efficient at using energy and
Yeah.
and like getting an output?
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of things that you can do on the platform, on the way you build a model,
Yes. Yes.
the way you integrate the model into the application.
Yeah.
So there's many layers or levels that you can implement to reduce your overall energy usage. But people mostly don't know about them.
Yeah.
Today, they'll just go on the cloud, click a button, use 1,000 GPU,
Right.
and then your CFO gets the bill, is a bit annoyed. Yeah, but nobody really
Yeah,
thinks that,
yeah.
hey, what could we have done?
Exactly.
So, we are doing a lot of work in open source right now. I'm actually leading a task force in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's actually an initiative from our TOC to really look at efficient AI and sustainable AI and define some of the best architecture practices as well for the industry to really kind of pick up and start to make people a little bit more aware of some of the benefits they could have if they architect their AI systems properly.
Yeah.
If they monitor their systems well. A lot of monitoring generally is absent, right? I mean, maybe people look at cost effectiveness a bit,
Yeah.
but energy effectiveness is still very much missing. So I'm doing a lot of work to encourage. I mean, you'll see me speaking, at KubeCon, Green.io,
Yeah.
about these topics.
Yeah.
A lot because I think a lot of engineers have kind of more power than what they really know
Yeah.
or think, right? You take a lot of decision every day that actually have an energy impact
Yeah.
without realizing it.
Yeah.
So that's what really made me very interested in this, right? The fact that I can advocate and get a lot of impact
Yeah.
because of the community of engineers that we touch through open source.
That's great. That's great. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for your time. I really, am impressed basically about how we take this really basic concept, which is AI and open source. But, I think what you've been able to do is think about the global implications, both the geopolitical side and what we just talked about in terms of sustainability, energy. And, these are decisions that I think really will impact the future of the world. Before we wrap up, if the audience is interested in connecting with you or learning more about RedHat, where can they find you?
Well, you'll probably find my profile very easily
Yeah.
in most of my speaking engagements.
Great.
Vincent.caldeira@redhat.com. But the best is always find a topic that you are really close to
Yeah.
and you want to contribute.
Yeah.
And then identify the best open source community to do this. Because it's not just me, but you'll have access to a lot of wonderful individuals who are more than happy to help you
That's great.
get familiar with the contribution model and kind of guide you.
Yeah.
And look, I've met the smartest people I've ever known really through this model, right? So just be my guest, join us.
That's great. That's great. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for your time. I know you're really, really busy and really great having you on the show.
Thank you, Philip.
Until next time.
Thank you.